It's Friday, October 24th, and this huge severe storm looks like it could be pretty dangerous today. This risk is going to be centered over Texas, and we could see all hazards. So that means a tornado risk, a wind threat, and even a hail threat. Starting with that wind risk, I think this is going to be the primary thing to look out for today. In this larger 15% area, I would not be surprised to see some gusts in excess of potentially even 70 miles an hour. And then for our hail risk, I think in the higher risk area, this 15%, we could potentially see some hail, maybe in excess of 2 inches, but this storm is going to be a pretty linear mode. So I don't think that will be for too long. And then last but not least, our tornado risk. I think this could potentially see a couple of spin up tornadoes. I don't really think there are ingredients present to see anything super strong today. Not really expecting anything super catastrophic there. And it's also important to note that we do have a thunderstorm risk, which kind of just spans out into parts of the southern Rockies, upper plains, and other parts of the southern plains as well. And it's also good to note that this is really the only area where we're expecting to see any strong thunderstorm activity today, once again centered down here on Texas. And this is what the radar could look like as this system evolves as we go through the day. We're going to have some morning convection from yesterday's storm system. This is kind of going to be initiated some flow which was out here yesterday and just meandering off out towards the east. This is going to cause some problems for our future storms today with stabilizing the atmosphere. One of the big questions is, will the atmosphere be able to recover in time, and will this provide a bit of a capping aversion for these storms? Now, one thing here is that we're actually going to see a lot of pretty strong flow from the Gulf. This is going to bring quite a bit of cape and moisture, which is going to help to initiate some of those storms, which we're going to see around midday along a cold front. Here we go. We're going to start seeing a couple of blips before storms really start to get organized around the early afternoon hours. Now, in this earlier state, when we're seeing a lot of storm mergers going on and even just our storms getting their acts together, they're going to be a little bit more discreet. I think this is when that hail threat will kind of maximize along this cold front. So this is going to be luckily a little bit west of our big major metropolitan centers like the DFW area, and then also Austin as well. So out here in western Texas, I think that's when that hail threat is going to maximize, even because these storms are going to be a little bit more discreet. I think we could see a tornado threat potentially ramp up as well. I think one of the areas to watch for this tornado threat are going to be specifically down here with this more southern cluster of storms, and even a bit of a sneaky threat up here up north. I think we're going to have some of our best shear parameters, because this is going to be our low pressure center, and then right here are going to be these storms. So some of our best shear parameters up here, some pretty solid instability as well. I think we could see a tornado threat potentially in the Texas panhandle, and then also down here and kind of the more southern tail end of our big risk today. Now, this little more messy part near central Texas, we are going to see a lot of storm mergers, and the shear is going to be pretty solid there as well. Would not be surprised if we were to see a couple of spin up tornadoes because of that. But as we go through, the storm is going to get a lot more messy and a lot more linear, and it's going to evolve into a mesoscale convective system. I think this is when that hail threat is going to kind of diminish a whole lot, not really seeing anything above 1.5 inches in diameter, and that wind threat is especially going to ramp up as it turns into a more linear outflow driven MCS. Now, another thing to note is that when the low level jet kicks in around sunset, I think that's when really that threat for damaging winds and spin up tornadoes is going to maximize once again, especially down here in the more southern portion of our risk, maybe even up here near the central Texas portion near parts of DFW. However, it looks a little bit more messy up there, and it looks like some storm mergers might be going on, which could also kind of lead to more spin ups in that line as well. So definitely something to look out for if you're in this area, where this could even potentially turn into a Boeing segment as we go into the night tonight. Definitely want to be aware for some severe weather. I think this will actually last in the more southern portion, so just south of the DFW and then Austin area, kind of this quadrant right here, probably all the way until tomorrow morning. And then there is one more area I want to take a quick peek at that's going to be closer to the actual low pressure center itself. So back here, we're actually going to see a bit of a dry line develop in parts of pretty far eastern New Mexico and also kind of close to the Texas New Mexico border. And along that, I think we could see maybe some more development. Here is where that's going to be also aided by the low level jet. I think with this though, it's primarily going to be just a very brief hail and wind threat, even if these storms can get organized back here closer to our low pressure center. And actually, I'm also willing to say that the tornado threat is not zero with this. However, I think it's really going to be maximized with our line today. And here's a better look at our jet stream. This is going to be the main thing causing a lot of our severe weather. Today, we can see we have a positively tilted wave moving through. Definitely a lot of kinks within it called short waves. Those are going to help to initiate some severe weather as we go. And also there's just not a whole lot of forcing here. That's going to definitely help with some of the more discrete modes in the earlier stages, but it also could mean that we're just going to have a lot of widespread storm initiation as well. Now, moving into the deep dive, this is really what the environment is going to look like today. Definitely solid shear parameters in the lower levels for a spin up tornado risk. We're going to see over 100 helicity and close to 20 knots of low level shear. It's actually really solid, and even a really high amount of bulk shear nearing 50 knots. Definitely think we're going to see some portions of this line get really organized and potentially produce all hazards of severe weather. I definitely think that's going to be in play. We even see some curvature in the lower levels of our photograph, then a nice elongation out. Our cloud bases are absolutely going to be low enough for a tornado threat to be present. Really, the only thing hindering our tornado threat today is going to be some pretty low level lapse rates, and also not a whole bunch of 3 cape. But definitely with this shear and how organized this line is expected to get, I definitely think we're going to see a couple of spin up tornadoes within this line. Also, we have some wind veering aiding with that. There's also going to be a bit of a capping inversion. I think these storms will be able to break it pretty easily low with this cold front, and then also because our forcing isn't going to be a whole bunch, that provides some question on if these storms will really be able to take full advantage of this environment. Also because the morning storms are going to also kind of be the main reason for this stabilization in the atmosphere. So I definitely think we'll still see storms today, but I also am curious as to how this will limit the strength of them. But overall, we actually have a decent amount of cape nearing 2,000. That's actually going to be pretty solid for some thunderstorm development. Our precipitable water is going to be 1.3 inches, helping with that damaging wind threat. Then we also see even a bit of cape up here near our freezing level. Also, with our higher bulk shear, when these storms are going to be in their more discrete modes at the very start of our potential outbreak, even before it turns into a linear mode, I think we could see some hail in excess of 2 inches in diameter. But yeah, just to kind of recap, I think all hazards of severe weather are definitely going to be in play with our line. And this is just another weather sounding. This one is taken from a little bit more north in parts of the Texas Panhandle, one of the areas which I do think could have a bit more of a sneaky tornado threat today. And that's going to be especially because the shear parameters up there are going to be really solid. We're also going to have some really good cape, and our 3 cape is going to be even a little bit better, probably closer to 70. We're also still going to see that same curvature in our photograph as well. So in the Texas Panhandle, I think we could also see all hazards of severe weather today. And I also think we could even see a little bit more of a stronger sneaky tornado threat. Still nothing really that crazy though. It's likely just going to be for a couple of weaker spin ups. And we're going to end this video with a little recap on Tropical Storm Melissa. It has definitely seen better days. We can see that the low pressure center of Melissa isn't really defined at all, and that is because this storm has just been getting sheared apart right now. It's in a pretty unfavorable environment for some wind shear, and it has even gone through a bit of a weakening phase. However, I do think it's going to start to enter an environment with some better shear parameters for organization, and we're going to start to see it reorganize again as it meanders off a little bit more to the west, and then likely a little bit up more north, potentially even making a landfall in Jamaica. And the National Hurricane Center has kind of adjusted their cone of uncertainty to kind of accommodate what I was just talking about. This storm is still expected to turn into a monster major hurricane, and it even could impact parts of Jamaica. A lot of our models are kind of starting to go on this trend where we'll see a landfall in Jamaica, then a subsequent landfall in parts of Cuba. But there's definitely still tons of uncertainty on where Melissa will actually go, as we're really just going to have to wait until this big ridge up here in the southeast kind of gets pushed out by that low pressure system and trough moving through to really get a true grasp on the track of Melissa and really fully understand where the storm is going to go. But as of right now, definitely still a lot of room where it could potentially track. Not really still certain at all, but I definitely think as we go into the next couple of days, this track is going to definitely change a little bit more, and then we'll also get a better idea on where Melissa is actually going to go.